Everyone, will resume the meeting. Thank you. We have a bit of an issue with some of the restrooms in the town hall at the moment, so we took a little longer than anticipated. Item 9 now, which is the Auckland Transport update. Vander Putin will be leading the presentation today, and we have with her Murray. Again, there was a presentation sent through that people will have had a chance to decline. Otherwise, we'll just hand over to you, Stacey, to take us through it.
Thank you, Chair, and acknowledging your comment prior about expediting this paper, so we will be speedy as we go through it. We will take it as read. We'll give some high-level updates as we sort of go through before questions at the end. So in terms of contents today, we will go through some recent highlights and challenges, and actually since this was submitted, there's some other things that I will add in there as well. And then we've got some topical updates as in the slide pack along temporary traffic management, Great North Road improvements, the capital program, as well as the digital rapid transit and potential for the trial with that as well. So in terms of SOI, is obviously a statement of intent has been a big topic, so I just want to confirm that that is in the final stage before being submitted for acceptance later this month. It does focus on making every interaction count, improving network productivity, taking public transport from good to great, and delivering a capital program with a focus on value for money. There's also a really big key theme in there about making the most of what we've got in terms of our maintenance and asset strategy regimes with that too. In terms of our current SOI, and as we go into the year end, I can confirm that May year-to-date met or exceeded our targets, and we do expect that that'll come through in our June results as well. Key things with that, we've got almost 400 kilometres of local roads renewed against our program, and that includes 85% of all the repair sites for the 2023 extreme weather events as well, included in that. In terms of the union, what we saw of the recent industrial action. So obviously the statements within your pack have changed. CAF is closed out and settled and ratified, of course. In regards to Auckland One Rail, they did have their stop work meeting yesterday as communicated. By all accounts, the feedback on that has been very positive. They still do have to go through a vote process on that. That's done via post. But we expect that to be positively concluded, and we'll update everybody at that point in time. And thank you for your support, and during that we know that it is disruptive to customers, and they collectively, did their best to overcome the impasses and move forth. In terms of other updates that I'd like to give, there are a couple of things that I thought were sort of important to note. So in terms of conversations we had at this point last year in regards to ferry, and then particularly with the accelerated ferry program. So one key thing when going through the metrics last week that I noticed is that ferry customer satisfaction is at its highest since mid-2021. So with that, it's definitely come a long way in terms of some of those recent changes, reaching very positively for our customers. And actually in May, we had a 98.6% reliability rate with ferry. Also, in terms of that accelerated training program, we're confirming that Gulf Harbour will be back on the 9th of September in its entirety, which is a really good news. Fantastic. Yeah, I knew you would appreciate that update, so that is good news. And we were still looking at February for the Half Moon Bay sort of return of the weekend services with that. We had our first tranche 3 EMU roll off this week, and so its arrival, no doubt Murray may touch on that. I also sort of wanted to talk about bus driver screens, because I know that's been sort of topical, particularly as we've seen some of the aggression events across our network, whether that be customer facing or with their bus drivers. So in terms of that, we have 33 underway with various operators. and also a commitment by another operator to roll out 50. To support that, to support acceleration of it, given the various bus types, we've actually got a project manager starting on Monday who's going to focus on that for 3 months in terms of the overall program. So we look at that sort of capability. The operators are sourcing where relevant in terms of factory, I guess, specified shields, so to help accelerate that. So where appropriate and off the shelf, they can be done quickly. So they're sort of working through that and be able to give you regular updates on progress as that program accelerates throughout. The other thing that I thought I would touch on too, and it's a real shame that Councillor Lee isn't here, because I know there's always the conversation about how are we doing and compared to some of our peers, whether that be Wellington or Christchurch or in Australia. So I'm on the Public Transport Association for Australia and New Zealand board, and so we do meet quarterly, so we do share some of those insights. So I thought I'd bring some back just to help everybody understand in terms of what they're seeing as well. So with New South Wales, they were currently at 81% in terms of what we call patronage in comparison to pre-COVID. Queensland was a bit higher, they were 87%. And Perth was ahead at 111%, but they were very quick to caveat that by saying they had no lockdowns there. COVID wasn't a thing for them. And so all in all, they've noticed very similar things to what we talk about in terms of obviously a real increase in antisocial behaviour, fare evasion, escalating costs in major infrastructure projects, because obviously they've got a lot of big build projects on over there as well. Many obviously looking at fare policy settings and things like that in order to support patronage uplift. Some of them have really complicated legislation, things that are challenging for them, such as New South Wales, where they actually have a work from home legislation that basically doesn't, how do I put it, it allows people to work from home where practical and reasonable, but of course that makes it challenging for their regular commuter market. So all have sort of various impacts. More locally, Christchurch, this is only bus only, obviously, they were circa 107% last time I looked, and Wellington was just over 100% on their bus network too. So all things the same, obviously our buses are doing a lot better. We were well over 100 during that March. We've sort of come down a little bit, and that's what we mean by the new sort of travel pattern that we see post-COVID. And it's really intriguing because you see this really high in the summer when the weather starts getting colder, windier, wetter. People that do have the option to work from home, you can see it in the data. Yeah, you do take those dramatic drops on a rainy day or a rough day or whatever it may be. So there is a new travel pattern. So when we compare that to 2019, it's not the same. Yeah, purely because people travel differently based on weather patterns now. And where we have those seasonal highs like the model, some of those other patterns are quite different. So if we look at them year on year, they're the same. So if I compare this year to last year, we're far above where we were last year in terms of percentage of people travelling. But in comparison to that 2019 overall, it looks quite different, which is interesting. Sorry, I'm just trying to get that. I won't repeat everything that's on the slides, but in terms of the temporary traffic management, the NZTA is expediting the transition to the New Zealand Guide to Temporary Traffic Management by the end of 2024. NZTA has endorsed in providing funding to the industry steering group to aid the industry in this process, and the transformation program is collaborating closely with the ISG to align our industry transition work streams, and that includes what we're doing as a review of our commercial agreements, which has been initiated. And currently, in terms of our forward program, a risk-based approach has been mandated for the regional and local programs, and there is currently 490 projects underway or designed to be constructed that are being assessed for possible TTM savings with that and against new criteria as well. I'm going to hand over to Murray, who's going to give us the capital overview and Great North Road.
Great, thanks Stacey. Yeah, just some quick highlights from the capital program. Great North Road is a multifaceted project with stormwater upgrades, bus lanes, dynamic lanes, safety improvements and so on. Two key highlights here. One is the design review has resulted in no raised tables on Great North Road and pedestrian safety pedestrian safety will be ensured through signalised at-grade pedestrian crossings at 4 points on Great South Road. And the next stage of the project now is to go to the open market for construction tenders, and that will happen early in July this month. So moving on. So just some updates on recent achievements. Stacey mentioned the electric trains that are being constructed offshore. They are now rolling onto ships, and the first shipload came into Auckland recently, and we've got those trains now starting to be stored at the Wiri stabling yard. So a few pictures there from the progress in the last few months. Also, you're probably aware of the Miola Road project, and a lot of work going on Point Chev corridor at the moment, and some good progress being made on the Miola Road stretch. So just to highlight that work is continuing. In the next month look ahead, the works you may be aware on Mercury Lane from the CRL station entrance. There's a lot of work going on there at the moment, and the next phase of that is the above ground street works. So that will be moving into that phase in the next month, and you'll start to see some changes to the traffic layouts in that part of the city. I'll leave it there, and we can have questions later on for any specific things.
I thought I'd provide an update too in terms of the digital rapid transit, or trackless trams as they're called. I know that they did come to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee. We have met with them. The team are working with them to progress a trial. So in terms of next steps, they're sort of looking about locations, confirming that locations, confirming the dynamics of it, testing the weight, etc. So that there has been a letter sent in support of that, to get that accelerated, so we actually have a proper project timeline presented over the next couple of months. At this stage, we'll be doing it on the Northern Busway on a Sunday. Now, why I say that, we don't need to make major infrastructure changes. We can't do it during the week purely because it's a high frequency busway, and these vehicles do run at a slower speed in terms of what our buses do, and platform space, etc. But it gives what I'll call a really good idea, and we'll be putting, I guess, controls around that to be assessed appropriately. It also allows the technology to be looked at by other councils across New Zealand who can then come up and actually see it for themselves in operation. So that's good progress for all. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Stacey. That was a really good presentation there. Clear and articulate. Hopefully the councillors can match it in their questions. That might be a bigger challenge. So I just wanted to very quickly at the outset to congratulate AT on the really good response and the ferry customer satisfaction across the region. The industrial dispute being settled on both counts, that's really good, and to see the way that trial is being progressed with the trackless trams, which makes people, I think, when they come and present to our committee, that if there is good ideas, they can be picked up and they will be given due consideration by AT. So I think that's a very good signal to go out to the community generally. Okay, that's enough from me. Member Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the update as well, team. Like others here, the Transport and Infrastructure Committee Hui is one of the highlights of my month. With this in mind, are you able to just give a verbal response to the questions we submitted from our members, please?
I absolutely can. In terms of the targets within the Statement of Intent, being the first one, in addition to the existing measure of procurement spend with Māori-owned businesses, AT's Finance and Assurance Committee preferred new measure is around the number of marae and papakaianga improvements by AT's program. So that is what's in our draft SOI at the moment. It's still going through refinements in order to be able to finalise that. In regards to the equity framework, which is a really good question, and it's great that we have the opportunity to talk about it. AT will use the equity framework primarily as a tool to help staff think about equity in their work and as they go about their work. And so as an example of that, when we do strategic plans, we'll use the framework, such as with Future Connect, which is a network sort of plan. In terms of that, we'll use the framework to map equity issues, caption them as deficiencies in order to be able to fix. It's important to note that there also is a deprivation measure, you know, over top of that. So obviously, along with other elements, you know, that supports in terms of some of that decision making more broadly. And in terms of the work itself that brought that framework together, the work looked at transport equity in 3 dimensions. So where people can't easily access their daily jobs or needs, such as school, doctors, etc., where people can't easily access jobs, education, where people are affected by the impacts of the transport system, like noise from living next to a motorway, and other elements like that. So, and of course that overlay, meaning that we are fully cognizant and understand where people are less likely to overcome those issues and how the system can help them with that. The equity framework will be publicly released by August. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacey. I guess just with our efficiencies we're making through these interactions, my fear is that we're unintentionally circumnavigating the transparency for our councillors and constituents, so thank you.
Thank you, Member Brown. Councillor Simpson?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks. I think I agree with the points that you made at the beginning for Auckland Transport. Thank you. Look, I've just got 2 questions, and I wonder if it's not appropriate for you to answer them now, if you could come back to me later. But my first question is around security of passengers on buses. There was recent media around a 16-year-old that was attacked by someone with a pole. Thank you. What is the process here? What is the process that Auckland Transport drivers are told to do when something happens on a bus? I'm keen to be able to give Aucklanders assurance that when they get on the bus and something happens, what's going to happen? You know, what is the policy?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have CCTV and audio on the buses too. So if the bus driver notices something and there is a panic button that connects directly with depot, that then can deploy resources and contact police to be able to support that. And so CCTV footage for any incident is always, you know, downloaded and saved and then passed to police for part of their investigation sort of work. The key thing is how can we be more proactive in terms of understanding where these things are occurring. And so I do need to stress that we want people to be able to identify where these areas are. And the thing is, you get areas where it doesn't happen regularly or there is nothing going wrong, and that's extremely hard to be able to sort of combat. But that's why we introduce Crime Stoppers in terms of the texting application, so people can get that message sent straight away in a proactive way. It's not an alternative to emergency support. It is about helping us identify where these things are happening so that actually we can be more proactive in terms of responding to them, whether that's be with transport officers. From a bus driver protocol, their instruction is to get to a safe place. So if they are driving, to go to the next available stop or stop where it is safe to do so and contact depot.
So your advice to people on a bus where an incident occurs is to have the Crime Stoppers number on kind of speed dial. That's the number to use.
Not when a crime is occurring. A crime does not, Crime Stoppers does not replace emergency response, but in terms of if they're noticing antisocial behaviour in particular instances, and actually we're going into school holidays again. So we noticed last school holidays, and I think we talked about it here in terms of what I call a resurgence in terms of activity across the network of antisocial behaviour. And so with that, we're working proactively with the likes of local communities to be able to combat some of those key areas, such as Albany, around the Albany area was one that we've seen, New Lynn, and in particular stations and hotspots that we see. So we're putting together multifaceted sort of things, including also getting support from youth workers who understand, the demographics and helping us build better solutions.
Thank you. So if you could send us something to share with our communities, I think that would be really helpful around that, as you say, coming into school holidays. My next question is, did you hear the Kiwi Rail presentation? You were here. They said that when they opened the Eastern Line, there was a 50% improvement. That's not what I understand. What's your understanding about that?
Yeah, so in terms of improvement, they probably would have been measuring that it was 50% increase in services, I think what was said. So they would have been measuring from the baseline pre that work starting. So pre that work starting, there were significant what we call speed restrictions across the network, which may have necessitated not running a full and reliable timetable. So there would have had to be, regular cancellations in order to be able to maintain timetable, or actually there was a reduced timetable in place on the Eastern Line. So what we had post the works done was just a resumption of the regular timetable in full.
Thank you.
Councillor Walker.
Sure. When you have that trial, will it be possible for councillors and local board members to ride on the bus?
Anything is possible.
Okay, well, in that case, I assume that's a yes. And that includes the mayor. I didn't mean to miss you out, Mr. Mayor. And the other question is really just seeking confirmation that the report that you mentioned that's going to be out on the electrification process of the ferries, the hybrids and the like, that's going to be available July, as you've said earlier?
Was that previous Transport and Infrastructure Committee, that comment?
I've raised it the last 4 or 5.
Yeah, my understanding was we're coming back for a workshop on that topic. Let me confirm.
Okay, well, good, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Bartley.
Oh, thank you, Chair. My question follows on from Councillor Simpson, but it is around the repercussions for our Chinese community, because they're showing real fear now about getting back on the bus. So I wanted to know, is there, what reassurance can be provided back to our Chinese community that they are going to be safe, that they're not going to be subject to racial attacks, if that, which is what the teenager said. And I ask because I have Chinese heritage, so that's why I'm raising it here, and I'm worried because I have family who, could be subject to these kind of attacks. Thank you.
Absolutely. Look, our understanding this was an isolated event. In terms of that, we haven't seen anything of this nature reported in recent times. Of course, we're taking it really seriously in terms of how we both communicate about the topic. It is still under investigation, and so we're working with NZ Police on that. And actually, I spoke to them yesterday evening, and I know that they're also reassuring the Chinese community and going to speak with them too to make sure that we have a joint up response with how we're responding to it. It is one of those things that people lose confidence. And so just making sure that we've got the right reassurance in place and that we're working together in order to be able to overcome these issues, because that's one, there's others in terms of that. So making sure that we understand what's happening out there, so we're addressing it appropriately with the resources that we have, but also with the other agency partners that we can bring into it as well. Yeah.
Okay. Mayor Brown.
Thank you for the presentation. Can we just revert to the picture of Great North Road? That one there, that's good. Now, Mark will be aware of what I'm talking about here. Currently, the trees are all in a line in the outer 1.5 metres of the footpath, and that looks really good along there now. And when you did the design review, because this looks like you've shifted them off a straight line, so some of the trees will be pulled out, which just strikes me as a really unnecessary expense. And the thing that, again, we're looking at here is we're trying to get your design group, who are allowed to just do what they might like rather than think, unfortunately. But if you're going to have 1.45 metres taken out in a series of trees, that 1.5 is where the bus shelters should be put in between. Because A, it's close to the bus, so they get off and they don't even get wet. And B, it doesn't muck up the open space behind. Because we've got a series of that, and you do have the opportunity now that we're going through a new procurement for the stuff there, that we take out the ones that are put in places where they've just been randomly allowed to put them. And so, if you haven't spoken to your design group, I want to speak to your design group. And particularly, we've showed your chief executive, a number of them are put in places which are just guaranteeing there's a gap that's going to collect rubbish and people urinating between the back of them and the building, which is of no use at all. So that was a little bit. And I'd like to thank the Deputy Mayor for taking her role in safety so seriously and coming along as an orange cone. Thank you.
Okay, that's,
I'm happy to respond. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the comments, and I'm aware of the walkover you did with our Chief Executive Dean and also the comments that came to Mark. So we'll take those on board, and where we can optimise and improve the design, absolutely.
Thank you.
great, thanks Murray. Councillor Henderson?
Thank you. A couple of quick ones, Chair. Regarding the trial of trackless trams, can I just ask if there is a cost to this trial and will ratepayers be having to put in for it?
No, the trial is at the manufacturer's cost. They're willing to bring it here and trial it.
Okay, that's good. Second one's about something completely different, but following up on questions from the Deputy Mayor, I've been approached by various users and various sort of operators and things like that about driver safety and user safety. Wardens and police officers do great work on trains. I'm just wondering if you have approached these groups to try and get something together for buses.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, we've got multiple things that are going on there. The thing about the bus network, I mean, you basically need hundreds and hundreds of resources to actually be many places. Yeah, and that's the challenge with it. So, obviously, looking at it from different angles and what we're seeing, it's about identifying where these things are happening, you know, targeting, being more targeted with what we do, which is what we're doing. We're using data to be able to do that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Hills?
Thanks, Chair. Got a couple of quick questions. One is on the cuts to the $47 million cut by government to help driver conditions. I know that was put in by Minister Wood, and that really helped us get those 500 drivers. How are we going to supplement what was that funding that we were going to receive, and other drivers ongoing at risk?
Great question. In terms of where it got to us under the previous funding arrangement, that hasn't changed, so that's not taken away. The additional, what we wanted to work together as a sector in terms of improving the other terms and conditions, was used to be able to support that. It's not completely gone. There's still some funds there, and I believe the current Transport Minister did say that recently too. Obviously, some of that will be supporting the rollout of bus driver screens, which is good. That's not our only lever, yeah. So, I mean, in terms of that, like from a procurement policy perspective, we're currently obviously going through a number of years and the years ahead of re-tendering all of our bus networks. So, with what we've learnt since the round one when those contracts first come out, and what we've seen, we've enabled what I call proper baselines in terms of employees' terms and conditions, so they're not eroded as a result of procurement activity, and then we can work forward on that in terms of working together as a sector to make sure that we keep a game up. It's still very much there.
Thank you. On the and just a quick comment before a question, the ferry's amazing. Devonport, Birkenhead and Bayswater people are just so happy with the increased peak there, and it's working really well, and having more boats helps as well. Same with the buses. Shame that our trains patronage is down. On the safety, and this is not going to prevent crime, but it will help prevent people's confidence. Are we rethinking, and I spoke to Dean about this before, the wrapping of the whole buses? Could we have one side, the curb side, you know, not covered in, the windows covered in, advertising? Are we looking at lighting in bus stops? All those soft things that help people think, I will walk to the bus stop today, I will get on, I don't feel scared. I know that doesn't prevent crime, but it does help people feel more confident. It feels like some of those things are being dropped.
Great question. In terms of that, part of the program that we worked on in terms of improving public transport with the Mayor was about those first and last leg options, and there's been a lot of work done in terms of improving those captured zones. So in terms of that, we do have it as a focus within our programs in the coming years to do that. So that includes the likes of lighting is a big one, and particularly around bus stops and other initiatives in order to be able to improve zones. Also going out at night ourselves and understanding what that experience is like. So we're learning from it and can do better. Lighting is the number one. yeah, particularly around bus stops and walk-up zones, but also heat mapping where people are coming from and entering to station precincts, so that, you know, footpaths, etc., are all, you know, available and ready, because some of those sight lines in terms of that has not necessarily been done. We've built great stations, but in terms of what I call the catchment zone around them has not been done properly in order to be able to support active mode inclusion and walk-up zones with that. So that is a focus over the next few years, low-cost initiatives to improve that.
Thank you. And very last question on that, on the bendy bus trackless tram trial. If you've already shown that it's slower, can't move people as fast through the busway, why would we trial it there when we already know it's not going to be as good as the current buses? Could you trial it on the airport route because it's a shorter route and has fewer buses, or?
The idea is to trial it on the busway because it's got segregated infrastructure, so it enables us to easily be able to do a trial, or easier than doing it elsewhere, because we don't have to, what I'll call, put specific infrastructure in to be able to do the trial. That'll give us enough to know what settings it's going to be able to work in and the functionality of it, and if it's can be used in other projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Finally, Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. Touching a little bit on the question before around safety on buses, but sort of in an additional vein, the transport officers, we have them there partly for a safety aspect, but also fare evasion. When are we likely to be able to see what impact, if any, they are making? I suspect they are making impact. I'm not trying to be negative about it. I'm just curious as to when we'll have some data on how that's going.
Data in terms of what they see and report across the network?
Yep, and
Yeah.
also if we're starting to see some of that fare evasion coming down.
Yeah, okay, absolutely. Buses obviously pretty hard to get a bench line on, so I'll talk briefly about that. So bus drivers, we've made it really hard for them to be able to tell us about it. So we've making that easier, so like a two-step method, so they can record it and gives us accurate patronage, but also understands where that's happening. Since we've done that, we've seen what we call zero fare tickets double in terms of the system. So we're getting much better understanding of where fare evasion is happening, which is then we're deploying people. Yeah.
So it's going to go up before it goes down because we're getting better data.
We're getting much better data. So it almost doubled in that month since we made those improvements, and the much better reporting. So it's sort of helping that in terms of understanding where those things are happening. Yeah.
Okay. So when, in terms of, are we going to measure at the sort of 6-month mark, or when are we likely to see some visibility about how the transport officers are going generally?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll probably report back in, actually I'll put something in my head in about October, so we can report back about how that's going and what's coming through, and if those patterns change. That may not be long enough,
Yes.
but I would suggest before the end of the year we can bring something back to be able to demonstrate action taken on that.
Great. I think that would be helpful and support Councillor Henderson's comments about working in with other groups in that space. The last question was around the temporary traffic management staff. I'm really encouraged by some of the progress in this space, but curious to know what we're going to be doing about some of the smaller players. I think it's great that we're doing that work with the industry in general, but one of my concerns is about how we get smaller, the builder that's a couple of guys and a dog with a radio, and they put some cones out and they're not necessarily abiding by the rules, and then they're gone before we can enforce it, and they just do it again at the next work site. So what are we trying to do in that space, acknowledging that's really hard, but any thoughts in that space?
Yeah, I'm not sure if Tracy Buchanan's online. If not, I would say that will be sort of in terms of process improvement through the road corridor approvals. So for access and approval of TTM and the road corridor, that will be built in. But yes, it's an education in order to shift an industry in terms of better working practices.
And I guess also the question there is also about enforcement, that, we're putting in place better rules, and the quid pro quo for that, if you like, for the industry is that, hopefully they're going to find it easier to keep to the rules, but it does also mean that we need to enforce the rules and make it worth their while to comply, and not worth their while to break them. So are we looking at that space as well?
I'll just provide one comment, but we can provide a more detailed update offline. We're providing capability now for our parking officers so that they can be our eyes and ears out there. So if they see incidents, not taking them off their parking duties, but they can feed it back into the TTM team.
Great, thanks.
Okay, that concludes the questions. Thank you again for a very good presentation with some positive news this month round, which is good to see. I don't think anyone needs to really talk to this. We've had a very clear presentation. Councillor Baker is happy to move, and Councillor Dalton second. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, folks, we'll have a short break for lunch now. I think it's 10 to 1, looking at the clock over there. So we'll be back at 20 past to complete the agenda.